Hello, I'm Steve Davis, Vice President of Safety with Zimmermann, and I get to spend some time with you today talking about our torque refresher. Today we want to get into continuing our conversation about thinking about your thinking, and I want to start with a question today. Has anybody ever asked you, what were you thinking? Maybe a spouse, maybe your husband or your wife asked you that after you did something not so smart, and they said, what were you thinking? Maybe your kids asked you that and said, what were you thinking? Or most likely, maybe you've asked somebody else that very same question, what were you thinking? I want you to take a pause with me and I want you to watch this next video. And I bet you some of you would like to ask this guy, what were you thinking?
First, he forgets to secure the boat. Then he forgets to secure the forklift. And you get the idea. Talk about not learning from your mistakes.
So, after watching that video, you've probably got some answers in mind for what that guy was, or maybe better yet, wasn't thinking. And in the past, folks, how have we managed this? How have we gone about understanding and answering that question, what were you thinking? Well, traditionally we've done human performance review boards, we've done accident review boards, and we go through and we answer all of these questions that are on these forms. And oftentimes we're left feeling a little bit like, well, maybe we didn't answer those questions the right way. And in the past, folks, I'll even contend that maybe those weren't the right questions, or better yet, they were probably asked at the wrong time. What we need to get better is answering those questions in front of the event, not waiting until after it's over. So I want you to consider for a moment your toolbox. What's in your toolbox? Maybe it's a couple of human performance tools. Maybe it's a little bit of situational awareness. Maybe there's some hazard recognition skills in your toolbox. Well, before torque, this was your toolbox. Now, after torque, we want this to be your toolbox. We want to expand your toolbox. We want a bigger toolbox, and we want to fill it up with torque. So the purpose of today is to spend some time thinking about our thinking, answering that question, what were you thinking? And answering it in light of torque and developing your skills to think about your thinking before an accident happens. We want to talk about some of the things that we've learned over time that will help you in your work. Now that we've talked about a toolbox, let's talk about what we're going to put into it. Many years ago, I used to be an international man of mystery. I used to be a raft guide. I used to be a hot air balloon pilot. I was a firefighter and a paramedic. And I also did a lot of stunt work. And some of the stunt work I did was for companies like MTV, Ripley's Believe It or Not, Guinness Book of World Records. And while I was doing some of these stunts, I started to learn to think about my thinking, to think about safety planning and how does it go into being successful and being safe when you're doing high-risk activities. I want to share some of that with you today. I'm about to show you a video of a man named Felix Baumgartner. Felix did a skydive from a helium balloon. He rode a capsule up to 128,000 feet and he jumped out of it. Many years before this, 50 years before this to be exact, Colonel Joe Kittinger did the same thing. He was working for the Air Force and he was demonstrating that a pilot could eject from 102,000 feet is where he jumped. He was demonstrating that they could fall stable and have a free fall. Well, Colonel Kittinger was part of this project. You'll see him in this video. He helped Felix Baumgartner figure out how to do this from 128,000 feet and set a new record. Many years ago, I got to be fortunate enough to do some skydiving and hot air ballooning in the Alps with Mr. Baumgartner. So this video is a little bit special to me. I hope you enjoy it. We'll talk more in a moment.
Release.
If you're scared, walk away, 'cause there's no need to feel ashamed. Yeah, we all feel the same.
now. The whole road is looking now. I'm going home now.
Jumper away. Speed 725. Showing Felix in a stable descent. And Felix is back to run safely, the new world record holder.
So you might be also asking, what's that got to do with me, Steve, in my work? We do the same thing. We need to have that level of high engagement, high mental effort, first gear thinking when we're prepping for our work, during our pre-job briefs, during our 2-minute drills. We have to be engaged, thinking hard, using that 5-pound muscle of your brain to understand every aspect of it and make sure you have all of the details covered. As we talk about our leadership, the devil's in the details. We have to be there too, and that's the time that we do it, is in those first gear moments. So that when we get to doing the work and we hit that third gear, we're safe. We've done the hard things to protect ourselves. So if we should forget something, we're covered. We took care of it. We made our work area safe. So that once you get into third gear, you're ready to go to work. You can protect yourself if you forget something, if you have a momentary lapse of situational awareness, let's call it. If you're so involved in your work or you get distracted, you've done the hard things to protect yourself so that you can work safely and successfully, safe and right the first time. All right, so let's shift gears for a moment and let's get into second gear. And let's get into the second gear indicator lights. I want to talk for a moment about the RAS. We talked about this before. It's the reticular activating system. We want to learn and understand this and how it applies to safety. Let's go back to the story that we talked about last season, folks, where you're driving down the road, you come around the corner, under the bridge is a police officer with a radar gun. Whether or not you're doing anything wrong, what is your first reaction? It is to look at the speedometer and to put your foot on the brake. You've learned to do this, folks. You've programmed yourself to do this. There probably wasn't anybody that said, every time you see a cop, I need you to hit the brakes and look at the speedometer. It's a learned reaction. The thing that drives us to do this is this RAS. It's our security system. It looks ahead for us, even when we're not thinking about it. It drives us to do things. The RAS is incredibly important for safety. We've got to learn and to program our RAS with these things called the indicator lights. I want to talk about 6 of them today, and I'm going to add a new one from what we talked about last time. We want to add this very important indicator light that we've been learning about in the last year called This is the Way We've Always Done It. The first indicator light we want to program on your RAS is called Trust Your Gut. Last time we discussed this, we mentioned the book, The Gift of Fear, written by Mr. Gavin DeBecker, who is a world-renowned security expert. And in it, he talks about the importance of recognizing your intuition and your instincts. Let's take a look. Let's hear it from him directly.
Intuition is basically knowing without knowing why. It's that gut feeling that tells you there's something more to be learned here, and it's a whisper instead of a loud voice. And you could think of it as the distance between A and Z without stopping at all the letters on the way. And it is absolutely essential to parenting because we're all given this assignment by nature, which is to protect these kids. And intuition is the nuclear defense system. In fact, even the root of the word is inter. It means to guard and to protect. And that's what it can do for us if we listen.
The subconscious mind works on an order of magnitude faster than the conscious mind. The subconscious mind, as Mr. DeBecker said, reads from A to Z and skips all the middle steps. You know things inside of you that you've heard about, read about, seen about. They're in you, and they just haven't come to the surface yet in the conscious mind. What this thing called Trust Your Gut is quite simply your subconscious talking to you, and it has not come into the rational mind to be dismissed yet. Learn to pay attention to this. Learn to feel it and to recognize it and to have a conversation. In the power industry, and in human performance, we just simply call this a questioning attitude. Learn to grab onto it, to recognize it, to let it come into the conscious, and do not dismiss it. Next, folks, we're going to talk about be careful. You've heard about this. It's in our programming, it's in our language, it's in our safety flashes, and it's in our training. I probably don't need to explain too much of it. I do want you to watch this next video, and I want you to look and to understand where "be careful" may have lived in this next video.
October 21st, 2016. The MGPI processing facility in Atchison, Kansas. An unintended chemical reaction resulted in a dense cloud containing toxic chlorine gas and other chemicals that drifted into the community, leaving over 140 people with reported injuries. The incident occurred during a routine chemical delivery when two incompatible chemicals, sulfuric acid and sodium hypochlorite, were inadvertently mixed, forming the toxic cloud. The MGPI facility produces distilled spirits, specialty wheat proteins, and starches. The incident occurred in a section of the plant that uses sodium hypochlorite, or bleach, as well as sulfuric acid. These two chemicals, when combined, can form chlorine gas and other chemical compounds. On the morning of the incident, a truck from a chemical distribution company, Harcross Chemicals, arrived at MGPI to complete a routine delivery of sulfuric acid. After reviewing paperwork in the control room, an MGPI facility operator escorted the driver to a locked loading area. There, chemicals are transferred from trucks into the facility through piping, called fill lines, to several large storage tanks in an outdoor tank farm. The MGPI operator unlocked the sulfuric acid fill line for the driver to connect the truck's unloading hose. The operator remembers pointing out the correct fill line to the driver before he returned to his workstation. The driver, however, does not recall hearing the operator identify the fill line. Unknown to the operator, the sodium hypochlorite fill line was also unlocked, and the two lines, which were only 18 inches apart, looked similar and were not clearly marked. The driver connected his truck's sulfuric acid hose to the sodium hypochlorite line, and sulfuric acid began flowing inside. He then returned to the cab of his truck. Shortly before 8 a.m., a greenish-yellow gas began flowing from the bulk tank of sodium hypochlorite. The driver noticed the cloud in his truck's side view mirror and attempted to return to the connection area to turn off the flow of sulfuric acid, but the gas overwhelmed him. He then ran to the passenger side of the truck to close a valve that could halt the flow, but he was prevented from doing so by the gas. Instead, he ran away from the cloud and escaped to a separate area of the facility. At MGPI, the CSB found that the close proximity of the sulfuric acid fill line to the sodium hypochlorite fill line increased the likelihood for workers to make an incorrect connection during chemical unloading. The CSB also discovered that the two fill lines looked and functioned identically, using the same type of connections. Lastly, the CSB found that of the 5 fill lines in the unloading area, only one was labeled at the point where the hose connected.
The difference between being careful and doing something is what you saw in the video. Doing something looks like making sure those pipes are color-coded, or maybe they have different hose end connections so that you can't get them mixed up, or we put them in different places so that it's much harder to make the mistake that these operators made. Being careful looks like just pointing at it and saying, I need you to go do this. Make sure you don't hook that one up incorrectly. Understand, be careful is a counterfeit human performance tool. We need to get better at recognizing it for what it is. When you hear it, recognize it as your warning sign that we haven't done everything we need to do to be safe today. Schedule pressure exists, folks. It's been around since the dawn of time, since we started trading seashells for dog's teeth, okay? Time is money. We are paid to do a job. All true. We are paid to do a job in a certain time frame. If somebody said, I'm going to pay you to do this job, and the expectation is that job costs 3 hours, if it takes us 3 weeks, guess what? We're not going to be here doing that job in 3 weeks. We're going to manage that, folks. Understand, we're going to manage schedule pressure with our professionalism, with our leadership, with communications, with the schedule itself. What we are not going to do is allow schedule pressure to get us off of our values and get us doing crazy things, which is what I want to make sure we understand what the point is I'm going to talk about next, which is internal time pressure. This is time pressure, folks, but it is not schedule pressure. Sometimes we feel it as a result of schedule pressure. Sometimes we impose it on ourselves. We all have an internal clock that says how fast something needs to get done. And when that thing is not happening in accordance with our internal clock, guess what we start doing? We start fixing it. Watch this.
A few months ago, I took a road trip from Chicago down to New Orleans, and on the way back up, we were somewhere either in Tennessee or Missouri. I got pulled over. It's my first time getting pulled over, and it wasn't for speeding. It was because I was driving in the left lane.
So there are basically two types of drivers in the world. There are people who get really upset about all the people driving slowly in the left lane.
That's Joey. He fits in the first group.
And then there are a lot of drivers who have no idea that this is even a problem.
Yeah, that was me. Sorry about that. I don't drive much. The truth is, when drivers hang out on the left lane, it makes traffic worse and more dangerous for everybody involved. Here's what that looks like.
Don't let that be you. Never let internal time pressure challenge your values. Protect your values, act in accordance with them. Learn to recognize internal time pressure for what it is. Do not let it challenge your values. The next thing I want you to program is a field fix onto your RAS. Learn to know when you are doing a field fix that's beyond your skill of the craft, that's beyond the agreed upon instructions, that's outside of your pre-job brief. Learn to recognize when you're getting into this space. Let's watch this video.
Concrete, first to get some gravel, pour it in the bowl. You mix a mess of mortar, you add cement and water, see the mellow-rooney come out, slurp, slurp, slurp. Cement mixer, putty, putty. Cement mixer, putty, putty. Cement mixer, putty. Who wants a bucket of cement?
Komt u even mee starten, want er is nog deze schitterende wagen.
We need to understand one thing when we start thinking about a field fix. None of us is smarter than all of us. So when you find yourself in that space that wasn't planned for, when you find something in the field that wasn't just quite what you expected, understand we all want to be on the A team. We all want to get it done. We all want to demonstrate some heroics, knowledge, and skills that we're the people that get things done. Resist that temptation, folks. Go engage your leadership. Engage the people around you. And please, if you answered your own question, understand you asked the wrong person. Program this one on your RAS, something changed. We've talked about this in our previous training, in our safety flashes, and in the Betterment Report, the importance of recognizing when things have changed in your work environment. I'm going to show you this next video, and it's a little akin to some of the work I used to do in a previous life, where it is critically important that you recognize and react to subtle changes in your environment. Watch this next video, pick up on the subtle change, and watch what this adventure junkie does.
Last time I was here, I walked down. The conditions weren't perfect, so I ended up turning around and walking away.
You know, Mike doesn't turn around for many things, so knowing that he turned around on it, it must be a visual trip. Won't be too proud to turn around.
I'm hoping it looks a little better than it did last time.
So let me ask, are you too proud to turn around? Learn to recognize when something changes. Stop. Learn to downshift. Hit first gear. It may be nothing and it may be something. At least recognize it's something that we have to talk about. Remember this, when you hear this is the way we've always done it, we're at risk. Friends, we need to understand why somebody might say that. They might say it because they don't know a better way. They've never seen anything else. They don't want to be challenged. Please, have courage, push, ask harder questions when you hear that phrase. Let's watch this short video.
My asthma. They said they'd fix it, but it didn't make any difference at all.
Well, sometimes doctors make mistakes. Anna, you have to try twice as hard to fix them. Are you using your inhaler?
All the time. Go through one a week.
You sure you're using it right?
Do I look like an idiot?
No. Why don't you show me how your inhaler works?
According to Rear Admiral Grace Kelly, these are the most dangerous words in the English language. Learn, folks, to give some pushback. Please, I'm asking you, as the Vice President of Safety in your safety organization, when you hear these words, downshift, hit first gear, engage others, and let's find the best way. We're going to change gears for just a moment and talk about 4 things. There are 4 things that if we can change and we can do different, we can eliminate 70% of our accidents, 70% of our accidents, and about 85% of our serious accidents are related to these 4 things. Quite simply, it's walking is working, work area awareness, tools, and material handling. Believe it or not, here at Day & Zimmermann, about 20% of our accidents are related to walking is working. And what I'm talking about is going from A to B, getting from the pre-job to the work area, from the work area to lunch, from lunch to the trailer. We have some room to improve upon this. And these are the kinds of accidents I'm talking about, my friends, that are bad accidents. These are torn shoulders, these are broken legs, these are broken ankles. We have to improve upon this, and here's how we're going to do it. First, we're going to use the hierarchy of controls, and we're going to eliminate the hazards at every opportunity that we can. We're going to clean up the slippery surfaces. Understand, we do work in an industrial environment. We're not going to be able to do that in every instance. Where we can't eliminate it, we will warn, flag, and use other controls to make sure that people know if they're walking around in 3rd gear, it helps them recognize downshift and hit first gear and avoid an accident. What I'm talking about is quite simply a head knocker. Head knockers hurt. So if we have a piece of scaffolding that's in our way and we can't get through there, if we can't move the scaffolding, we'll try to do that first. We'll go ahead and flag it. Help the next person out who may be walking through the area and in 3rd gear and not paying attention to their surroundings. This next accident that I'm going to show you up here didn't need to happen. And there are 2 indicator lights that I need us to pay attention to when we think about this accident. Number 1 was be careful. Number 2 was this is the way we always have done it. One of our employees, one of our friends, fell off this pipe and broke their leg. In the process, they were climbing down the ladder and were attempting to transition to the pipe. In the process of doing that, they slipped. Here's the really difficult part with this. This has been going on for a long time. People had accepted this is the way we've always done it to access this area. Nobody ever stopped and said there's a different way. They used be careful to access this area. Instead of actually putting something in place that makes it easier to access the area, building a scaffold ladder, doing something like this, they chose be careful. It ended in a broken leg. About 20% of our accidents are caused by work area awareness, or more appropriately, a lack thereof it. Understand, one of your most important moments before you go to work is that 2-minute drill. It's the pre-job brief. These are the moments we hit first gear and we do the hard thinking to protect ourselves when we get into the work environment. Should we hit 3rd gear and maybe not be paying as much attention as we would like? What we need to do is make our areas, our workplaces, safe for 3rd gear thinking. It's not ideal, but understand, we do hit 3rd gear sometimes when we're at work. Please make sure your work area is set up for this. Cover sharp edges, protect against hot pipes. Make sure the ground is smooth and level, so that if you should take a step and back into something, you've done the hard work and you've protected yourself. This next injury I want to highlight is a classic example of being careful in the work area. One of our employees stepped in this hole that was in the work area. The really difficult part about this accident was it could have been prevented. The people doing the 2-minute drill pointed at the hole and they said, "Look at that, be careful of that." A few minutes later, somebody hit third gear, forgot about it, stepped in the hole, and we had an employee with a broken bone. Next, we need to recognize material handling for the risk that it is. The most important part about material handling is first recognizing when you're doing it. We find that when we evaluate a lot of accidents, people weren't really in the mindset that they were doing material handling. Please recognize when you're doing material handling. It's quite simple. Anytime we're moving stuff around, let me just put it that way. When we are doing material handling, please ensure you have a plan. This plan doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be a full-blown 5-page JSA. It needs to be commensurate with the work that we're trying to do. Next, I want to highlight this accident. And in this accident, there were 3 indicator lights that were missed. What happened was one of our employees ended up smashing their finger lifting this 276-pound spool with a partner. They were attempting to move it. Now, I don't even need to tell you how wrong trying to pick up something that heavy is with just 2 people. 3 indicator lights that were not recognized. Number 1 was something changed. Normally a spool this size comes on a pallet. It wasn't on a pallet. Normally mechanical means would have been used to move this. It wasn't available because they couldn't get it onto the forklift. Next, time pressure. There was a delivery person involved. They brought this spool to the job location and they said, "I need to get going, I'm running late. Can we just get this done?" Which next led to a field fix, which was just the 2 employees muscling this thing off of the truck. And in the process, our employee ended up with a broken hand. The last of the 4 things I want to talk about today are the use of tools. Tools account for a relatively small number of our total injuries. However, when they do happen, they are significant and they are severe. When it comes to tool use, we need to remember right tool for the job. Next, we need to know who knows what about a tool. That's leadership's job, to challenge, to go into first gear with our people on tools. If we're going to pick up a grinder, we need to spend the time understanding how the guard fits, making sure that we have the right type wheel with the right type guard. We need to make sure everybody understands the rules around the PPE and how we're going to keep our people safe when they're using something like a grinder. Now, this next accident I want to talk about resulted in a broken bone in the hand. One of our employees was using a holdback wrench during a torque operation, and there were a couple of indicator lights that become important in this accident as well. Something changed and it wasn't recognized once again. During this evolution, one Boilermaker was using a torque wrench. However, they weren't able to set the value because the bolt kept moving. This was a change when they went and got some help with somebody to use a holdback wrench on the bolt head. In the process of doing this, the individual using the holdback wrench did not recognize or believe that when the torque was added to the nut on the top, that the whole bolt would move. When this happened, their hand was in the line of fire and their thumb was crushed up against the structure. When it comes to using tools, make sure we're proficient. Make sure we're spending that time in first gear before we go into the field. If you have used a different grinder on a different job and there's a new one and you're not familiar with it, have the courage to stop, downshift, hit first gear. Leaders, periodically, get out the manual, read the notes and the cautions from the manufacturer. Make sure our people know and fully understand every aspect of how that tool is to be used and, most importantly, how it's not to be used. Leaders, you are responsible for making sure our people have the right tool for the job in the field. Thank you everybody for staying with me for this long. I want to show you one more video to tie this all together. I want us to finish answering the question, what were you thinking? In this next video, you're going to see Captain Sullenberger land an airplane on a river. And I want us to talk afterwards and have a quick discussion on what he was thinking.
Cactus 15 1549, 700, climbing 5,000.
Cactus 15.9, departure to contact line, maintain 15,000.
Maintain 15,000, Cactus 1549.
Cactus 15.9, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539, hit birds, so you're lost thrust on both engines, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures, got emergency returning. Who is it? It's 1529. He bird strike, he lost the thrust in the engines, he's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529, which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines, he said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529, if we can get it for you, do you want to try to land runway 13?
We're unable, we may end up in the Hudson.
Alright, Cactus 15.9, it's going to be left traffic to runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land? Do you want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
Teterboro, Empire, actually LaGuardia departure guy, emergency inbound.
Hey, guys.
Cactus 1529 over the George Washington Bridge, wants to go to the airport right now.
Wants to go to our airport, check. Does he need assistance?
Yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1?
Runway 1, that's good.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus? Cactus 15.9, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up at 2 o'clock in about 7 miles. Eagle 5, 4718, turn left thing 210.
210, 4718. I think he said he was going in the Hudson.
Cactus 1529, Houston.
You don't have to wonder too hard what Captain Sullenberger was thinking in this case. He was thinking all the right things. And do we know why he was thinking that? Because he spent the hard time doing hard things in first gear, learning how to land an airplane on a river, reading books, spending time in the simulator, going to class, doing training, building his hours, getting evaluated, catching feedback. All of those things helped him spend time in first gear so that when the moment came, he was able to perform in third gear and land an airplane on a river safely. That, folks, is amazing. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing as you step into the field today and you go to work. I'm going to ask you to do those hard things, to spend that time in first gear, to downshift and spend that mental effort thinking about your work and the risks that we all face every day and making sure that we're recognizing the indicator lights and we're taking the time to do so. Should you hit third gear, you are protected and you take care of yourself and the people around you. Safety doesn't sharpen steel. Only you can sharpen steel. Spend that time with your people. Care enough to coach them, to have those conversations, to get in their business. Thank you. Have a safe day.